The hunt for the perfect dungeon crawler has been the grail quest for many board game players for many, many years now. From the fantastic original Hero Quest from 1989 to its follow-up by Games Workshop, Advanced Hero Quest, there have been many people looking to find the perfect way to replicate a role-playing game in a board game. From board games to even card games, there's been many, many attempts to make the perfect dungeon crawling game. Even the grandfather who invented the Dungeons and Dragons game has even tried to get into the game to make the perfect dungeon crawler through the Adventure System board games, which has actually had 3 versions come out now. In 2005, Fantasy Flight Games created the game Descent, which was their version of the dungeon crawler, which came in a very large box that had numerous expansions, eventually making it almost a little bit long in the tooth. We're talking multiple expansions throughout the years, adding multiple ways to increase your gameplay and just improve Descent over the years. In 2012, Fantasy Flight Games redid the Descent system and brought it back out to the public in Descent Journeys in the Dark, 2nd edition. Does it live up to its heritage of its granddaddy of all Adventure System dungeon crawl board games or not? Stay tuned to find out. Hello and welcome to another off-the-shelf board game review. Today we're going to look at Descent Journeys in the Dark 2nd edition. Descent Journeys in the Dark 2nd edition is a dungeon crawling board game for 2 to 5 players ages 14 and up. Plays approximately 2 to 3 hours, but that can vary depending on the kind of quest you decide to play when you play the game. The game is designed by Daniel Clark, Corey Knitska, Adam Sadler. Based on a game that was originally designed, this game is actually inspired by a game originally designed by Kevin Wilson. Descent is a dungeon crawling board game where one player is going to take the role of the overlord, playing the bad guy or the antagonist, while the rest of the players, up to 4 additional players beyond the overlord, take the role of the party. Players are going to choose a quest from the quest guide, and this game can be played as individual quests or a complete grand campaign, which does tell a complete story arc over the process of the game. Each quest in the game is played on a customizable map board, which is going to be built depending on the quest chosen to play the game. Each one of the hero players are going to get to choose a hero to represent themselves. That's going to be their character for the game. And they're each going to get skills that they're going to choose from a skill deck based on which class and they decide to play. The 4 basic fantasy classes represented. You get your knight, warrior, berserker, you get your spellcaster, you get your healer, and you also get your thief or scout type of class. Each player is going to have a miniature representing themselves on the board, and the overlord player is going to control all the bad guys represented by cards that give their statistics, and also by miniatures they can also place on the board. Combat in Descent is dice based. Players are going to roll dice for success based on statistics. Players have hit points, defense, and everything's going to judge what kind of dice they're going to roll. Each quest has its own unique solution for victory, and it's not always just wiping out the opposing force. Descent can be played through standalone quests, or you enjoy the game as one grand campaign, which is linking a whole bunch of quests together, 9 to be specific. The game does come with 20, adding a lot of variety to the game because you're really only going to use 9 of those quests to complete the grand campaign. If you play as a single standoff type of encounter, there's going to be unique requirements for each party, either the overlord or the hero players, to complete the quest and win the game. If you play as a campaign, win or loss during the random adventures is going to cause various events that are going to influence future quests. And the grand final encounter, whoever wins that grand final encounter will be the grand winner of the campaign, whether it's the overlord or the hero players. Descent retails for $79.95, and for the $80 you're getting a lot of pretty good components in this box. Starting with the miniatures. The miniatures themselves are really highly detailed. The game comes with 39 of them. I'm just going to show you a couple of them, starting with the Elemental. This is actually a large miniature that actually has a lot of details in it, and for some reason the camera's having difficulty zooming in there. There we go. You see there's a lot of details in this. This is a very good sized miniature. Comparing it to the standard size miniatures, you see that's actually pretty big. The hero miniatures themselves are also very well detailed. You can see emblems in their shields, you can see details in their faces, their armor has lots of details in it. The mace itself, you can see the spikes in the mace. This goes around all for the backside and everything. Continue to look at a couple of the hero miniatures. You can just see there's a lot of details in these miniatures. They're sculpted extremely well. Even for the smaller miniatures, such as the little thief with his dagger, you can see a lot of details like packs, details, emblems. You can make out their faces, and these miniatures look really fantastic once they're painted up. They paint up it very nicely. And again, the game does come with 39 of them. The villains do come in 2 colors, and I'll explain why later when I'm explaining how to play the game. Next we have the hero cards. Again, we see there's really good artwork used throughout this game. They are double-sided, and I'll go into that when I explain the game, but really good card stock used for those. The game has some really good quality dice. The dice are engraved, so you don't have to worry about the emblems wearing out on them anytime soon. They're actually etched, completely etched. The cards for the game are very good card stock. Pretty good thickness on them. Not the thickest, but pretty standard for the industry. There's artwork on all the cards. The text for the cards is very well done, very legible, easy to read from across the table. And you see there's artwork on all the cards. Looks really good, fantastic artwork. The game does use standard size cards and the mini cards. And even the mini cards are pretty decent. They all have artwork on them also. Pretty good quality on them. Not super thin, not super thick, not very bendy. Really good quality on the cards. The map tiles themselves are also double-sided. The top side is going to be for an outdoor type of scenario, and the back side is going to be your dungeon type of scenario. They all interlock very well. And if you're asking or if you're wondering, these are not compatible with the first edition Descent tiles or any other of the Adventure System games. These tiles will not interlock with those. They're cut just ever so slightly different. But they do interlock with themselves very well, holding in pretty well. They're not going to fall out. They're pretty nice, snug connection on those, and really good artwork on the tiles. The tiles themselves use a pretty thick card stock on them. Really durable. They're very hardy, nice. Again, artwork on both sides looks really decent. The game does come with 2 books. There's the rule book and the quest guide. They are illustrated with lots of art inside them, lots of gameplay examples. The rulebook is very well written, and like I said, it does include some very good examples on how to play the game. You're going to get most of your questions answered by this rulebook. I know Fantasy Flight Games used to have a reputation of not having the best rulebooks. This is an exception to that. They've actually gotten really good with the rulebooks. This game covers most of the problems you're going to have. And even the fact that came out with the game had only a few errata for the game, so they actually did a really good job there. The quest guide is also very well designed. Lots of colorful artwork, lots of full color diagrams, lots of thematic text in it. Quest guide is done very well. Overall, show you the back, sorry. Overall, the components for the game are actually really well done. Fantastic card stock used for the boards. The miniatures have a lot of great detail on them. You can look at the larger dragons. Very good detail. You can see the spikes, you can see the mouth, the eyes, the claws, the individual fingers. Everything is really designed very well there. Really good sculpts on those, even for the smaller ones. I'll grab one of the smaller bad guys, the goblins. You look at them, you can see their visor. They have a couple spikes on their bow. Just a lot of little tiny extra details to make the sculpts just look ever so much better. And again, even for the heroes, I mean, look at this guy. He's got really good details. You can see the flowing of his robe. His book has lots of details on it. If you look at the book, there even looks like there's little symbols on the book, almost like written words inside the book. Again, really high attention to detail. They did a fantastic job with these miniatures. Cardstock is really well done. There's no super thin cardstock used anywhere. Cards have good quality stock. The player hero cards, good cardstock. The cardboard components are really well done. They're thick cardboard. I've actually seen board games that aren't quite as thick as this, so that's actually very well nice there. The chits themselves have artwork on them. You see the art design on those. Again, overall, for the price, you're getting a really good package, good quality components, very good miniatures. They paint up very, very nicely. My set isn't painted because I was waiting until I got my review done, but I've actually seen a few sets painted and they look really, really nice once they're painted up. I'm going to show you how to play Descent, but before I do that, I'm going to let you know that I have the game set up using the very first adventure called First Blood. I'm not going to take the time to show you how to play campaign play simply because it would make this video a lot longer, and I think if you see how the game plays as a single adventure, it'll give you a good idea whether this is a game you're going to like. Just the difference between a basic single adventure and a campaign adventure, just know that your heroes are going to grow in strength over time as the further adventures continue. The overlord is going to grow in strength over time, and the decisions and successes and failures you make in each adventure are going to carry on into future adventures. Also, Descent can be played as an Act 1 or as an Act 2, and basically what that means is, to use a Dungeons & Dragons game or role-playing game type of terminology, it'd be like a low-level campaign versus a high-level campaign. I'm going to be using all Act 1 cards, which is basically starting cards, starting level creatures, starting level heroes, and starting level equipment. There are rules for this game to play one-offs where you actually start on the higher level gameplay where you use the Act 2 creatures, the Act 2 monsters, and the Act 2 abilities of the heroes. But again, that would make this video way too long and it's just going to make things too confusing. So I'm basically going to concentrate on Act 1, a single quest type of game. Descent is playable from 2 to 5 players. One of the players has to take the role of the overlord, which is going to be the person in control of all the bad guys. The remaining players are going to control the heroes. Now if you have 2 players, you're going to need at least one person to play the overlord, and the other hero or the other person is going to have to control at least 2 heroes. If you have 3, 4, or 5 players, you're going to have to divvy up the heroes as such. Now, before I go into too many details on how to play the game, I'm going to explain the dice because Descent uses customized dice, and the dice are actually probably the most complex thing to learn when you're trying to learn how to play Descent. There's 2 kinds of dice in the game. There are your defense dice, which are the gray, black, and brown dice, and they're easy to tell because they have the shield symbols on them. They have blank sides, shield symbols, and different amounts of shield symbols. Now the black die is the best die because it has the most amount of shields on it, and the brown die is the worst one because it has the least amount of shields and actually has the most amount of blank spots on it. I'll explain what the shields mean when I get to that point, but these are defense dice, and the rest of the dice are your combat dice. Now the blue die is always going to be rolled every time you make a combat roll, and it's going to be rolled along with the other dice. The blue die is the only die that actually has an X symbol on it, and anytime you roll these as combat dice, and if this blue dice comes up with the X, no matter what the other dice say, your attack is an automatic miss. That's the only way you can automatically miss with a melee weapon. Ranged weapons are a little bit different. I'll get on those in a minute. On these dice, you're going to see a couple different symbols. You're going to see a number, which is a range number. You're going to see some hearts, and you're also going to see a lightning bolt. Now the lightning bolt is used for extra abilities such as extra damage, extra healing, and everything like that. And you get extra abilities based on how many lightning bolts you roll on the dice. So if you roll the dice and you got 2 lightning bolts, you can activate 2 lightning bolt special additional abilities. Hearts are added up to figure out how much total damage you do. So if you rolled these 2 dice right here and you came up with 3 hearts, you would have done 3 hearts worth of damage. Your opponent would then roll the defense dice, and the amount of shields they would roll would be subtracted from the amount of hearts worth of damage you would have done. So if you roll 3 hearts worth of damage, and your opponent rolled 1 shield, they'd actually take 3 minus 1, 2 hearts worth of damage. So unlike some games like, for example, Super Dungeon Explorer, where you only take 1 damage per hit, you can actually take multiple hit points of damage for 1 hit, anywhere from 3, 6, 9 even points of damage for 1 hit. So you do have to be careful about that. Now ranged combat is just a little bit slightly different. When you go in for ranged combat, you're going to select your target in advance, and then you're going to roll the dice, and the numbers are going to add up to show how much actual range you got. So for example, if you picked a target that was 7 squares away and your total range was 5 plus 1, which is a 6, normally that would be a hit, but since it's out of range, it's actually a miss. Even though you didn't get the X, it's still a miss because the target was too far out of range, and you can't select a new target. You'll select your target first, roll your dice, and that tells you how much range you got. So that would be an automatic miss. That would hit a target up to 5 squares away. Again, ranged targets actually gives you 2 chances to miss. You do pick your target before you actually do your rolling of the dice. Show you a sample weapon card here. This is the Iron Spear. If you look at the Iron Spear, it shows that what you would do if you were to roll this for combat, you would roll 1 blue die and 1 yellow die, and that would be your combat roll for this example. You would take your roll and figure out whether you hit and how much damage you did. Now the difference between weapons and armor is weapons tell you how many dice you're going to roll. Weapons give you a certain amount of dice to roll, while armor actually adds additional dice to your roll. Minor point, but it can be confusing for new players who don't know. Again, armor gives you additional dice, so if you had this equipped, you get 1 more white die on top of however many white dice you already get, while weapons tell you how many dice you actually roll. It's not an addition, it's your total amount of dice you're going to roll. So this weapon is a perfect example. For every lightning bolt you would get, you could use the special extra abilities of this weapon. Your first lightning bolt you can use to either do piercing damage, or you can use it for an extra heart of damage. So if you got no lightning bolts, you want to get any of those special abilities. If you got 1 lightning bolt on your die roll, you could pick either this, the extra heart of damage, or piercing. Or if you got 2 lightning bolts, you can actually go 1 extra damage and piercing damage, so you could use both abilities of that card. Just to give you an example, if I had this equipped, I would roll these dice. That would be 2 hearts and 1 lightning bolt. I can either choose to do the extra heart of damage for 3 hearts of damage, or I can do piercing damage. Let's say I choose to do the heart damage. My opponent gets 1 defense dice. They rolled 1 shield, so it'd be 2 hearts, plus the extra 1 from the lightning bolt, 3 hearts, minus 1. I would have done 2 points of damage to my opponent at that point. Go ahead and start with all the abilities the Overlord starts with. We'll start with the Overlord's creatures they control. Every creature on the board the Overlord controls is going to be represented by a card. The first thing you're going to see is their movement, and that's how many squares they can move on their turn. Their hearts are how many hit points they have, and the shields are how many dice they're going to roll in defense. You notice that these attributes are copied down below, and the difference is this is a standard version of the monster. This is a master version of the monster, which is a difference of the white standard, red for master. You'll see the masters are always a little bit more powerful than the standard ones. This is how many dice they're going to roll in combat, and if you flip the card over, you're going to see that it explains what their extra abilities do. The Etten, in this case, has 2 special abilities. One special ability they have is reach on the standard Etten, and the master Etten has 2 special abilities. The ability of reach, which allows them to attack at an extra square's distance, and throw, and if you flip it over, it explains what those abilities do. In this case, throw allows that to pick one of the heroes up and throw them across the board. Down below you're going to see a couple symbols, and what this means is this is how many Ettins you'll have to control as the Overlord if you're playing versus 2 heroes. Not 2 players, 2 heroes. This is how many Ettins you have to control if you're playing against 3 heroes, and this is how many Ettins you have to control if you're playing against 4 heroes. So 2 heroes would be 1 regular Ettin, 3 heroes, 1 master Ettin, and finally if you had 4 heroes it would be 1 standard and 1 master. Finally, you'll notice there's a little symbol here that looks like a 2-handed axe. That means that it can only attack melee attacks, whereas opposed the goblin has a bow and arrow symbol. That means they get ranged attacks. You'll see that when they get lightning bolts, every time they roll a lightning bolt, they get an extra 2 damage. And again, they can only use that once, so if they get like 4 lightning bolts, they're not doing an extra 8 damage. And down below, if it's a master version, they'll do an extra 3 damage by using one of the lightning bolts. The next thing the Overlord player gets are the Overlord cards, and they're going to start with 15 of those, and if you're playing the campaign, they can build upon those. Or also, if you're using the Epic Play variant, you can build upon those also. Now, these cards basically are just going to give the Overlord special abilities. There's 3 different kinds. There's an event, there's a magic, and then there are traps. And basically what these are going to do is going to allow the Overlord to throw surprises at the players, make their lives a little more difficult, and make the Overlord's turn still exciting, add variety, and also allows them to interact with the heroes on their turn by playing cards such as the trap, which states you play this during one of the hero player's turns and then a bad thing can happen to them. You're going to notice a number down here in the lower right hand corner. That number is only used if you're playing the campaign or epic rules, and basically tells you how many experience points the Overlord has to pay to purchase that card later on during the campaign. Some of the cards will cost 1, some will cost 2, some will cost 3. Next we have the hero cards. The hero cards fall along just like the monster cards. You're going to see movement, how many squares they can move, how many lives they have, how much stamina they have, and what die they roll for defense when they're attacked. Now again, as I said, if they have armor, that's going to give them additional dice on top of that. Each hero is also going to have a hero ability, which is generally always in effect or gives a nice ability to the heroes around them. And then you're going to have a heroic feat, which is usable once per encounter. Once you've used an encounter, you simply flip the card over and you notice the heroic feat is no longer listed. All other statistics stay the same. Finally, down here we're going to have abilities which are best described as saving throws or attribute tests for anybody who's played a role-playing game or something like that. And basically what it's going to do is sometimes the Overlord's going to play a card on you and it's going to tell you to test an attribute. You're simply going to roll the black and the gray dice together, and you have to get an amount of shields equal to or less than the number you're told to test. So if you're told to test this attribute, which is might, you need to roll 1 or less shields on 2 dice, the black and the gray one. That would be 3 shields. That would have been a failure, although if it would have been a test of this attribute, need 3 or less shields, he actually would have passed. Finally, each one of the characters is going to have a symbol up at the top, and that's going to tell you which 2 classes this hero can choose from to advance and level through. This tells you with this symbol that he can pick the Thief classes, and he can also pick the Wildlander classes. While Grisbin, with his symbol right here, shows you that he can pick the Knight and the Berserker classes. And the Wizard gets the Spellclassing classes, and this symbol is for your Healer classes who can pick between the 2 healing classes. At the beginning of the game, each player is going to get the opportunity to pick a specific class for the hero. For example, if you're the person who controlled this hero, you get to either pick Thief abilities, or you can pick Wildlander abilities. And these are actually very different abilities that's going to make your hero play differently. The Wildlander is pretty much your ranger, and your Thief is your basic thief with backstabbing, hiding type abilities. Once you've picked your class you're going to be, you're going to start off with your basic abilities. For example, the Thief starts off with the Blades and with the Lucky Charm, and also with the ability called Greedy. The rest of these cards are only usable through the campaign or through Epic Play, and basically there's going to be a symbol there telling you how many experience points it costs to buy this ability. Once you purchase it, you get to keep it permanently throughout the campaign or throughout that epic quest that you're going through. They cost anywhere from 1 all the way up to 3. There's also a symbol down on the lower right hand corner on these cards. That's going to tell you how much fatigue it costs to use this ability. Each hero has a fatigue statistic. For example, he has 5 fatigue, and some of the abilities are going to require you to use fatigue. You simply use the ability, take the fatigue, add it to your counter, and the fatigue is spent. You can use a rest action to get your fatigue back. You can never spend more fatigue than you have, so if you somehow would get 5 fatigue, he can't use any more abilities until he rests. And if anything would cause you to take another point of fatigue damage when you're already at your maximum fatigue, instead of taking further fatigue damage, you actually take hit point damage. Since I'm actually going to play a couple sample rounds and I'm going to show you how this game plays out, I'm going to go ahead and pick the classes for our heroes right now. I'm going to pick the Thief for Tomble. For the Dwarf, we're going to pick the Berserker, which is going to give him the chipped axe and the ability to rage. For Leoric, we're going to pick the Rune Master, which is a pretty cool, interesting take on the wizard. He's going to start with a magic rune, and he's going to start off with Runic Knowledge. And finally, for the Dwarf, we're going to, I'm sorry, not for the Dwarf. Finally, for the healer down there, we are going to take the Spirit Speaker, which is going to give her a staff and the ability called Stone Skin, which allows her to prevent damage to her fellow party members. Now, do note that the classes do play quite differently. I mean, even though this is a healer class, the Spirit Speaker plays quite differently from the Disciple. Both of them help the party survive longer, but they go about it different ways. Makes a huge difference throughout the gameplay. Now, Descent is broken up into phases. The game is going to start with the heroes, and each hero is going to take a turn. Now, the heroes can take their turns in any order, and you can change the order every time you start a new hero turn. You can start by Tomo can be the first player, then Leoric can go next, or you can switch out depending on the situation that's going on. On a player's turn, they're going to get 2 actions only, unless they have a special ability that allows them to change that. They can use their special actions, or their 2 actions to do any of the following. They can use it to attack, they can move, they can rest, they can search, they can use a special ability, or they can stand out once they're knocked out. Now, Descent does not use player elimination. If a hero loses all their hit points, instead of dying, they're simply knocked out. On that hero's next turn, they automatically get 1 action only, and that action is to stand up and they get a slight heal. Additionally, another hero can come along and help them stand up also, and that also gives them a slight heal. If they're not helped by another hero to stand up, they're going to lose their turn by standing up. Whereas opposed if a fellow hero comes along and uses a heal action, they're going to get to stand up and they'll still get their full turn. Any ability card that has this turning arrow on it means that that action requires, to use that ability requires an action. Don't get confused if you're a Magic player and think that action means to tap or to exhaust the card. When you're exhausting a card or tapping the card, if you want to use the Magic term or something like that, or bowing, any card game, they all have their own specific terms for it. This game uses the term exhaust, and exhaust means you simply turn the card sideways to let you know you can't use the card anymore. And if a card doesn't say exhaust, you can keep using the ability as long as you're willing to pay whatever other costs the card has. If it has that little arrow symbol, though, it does cost you one of your 2 actions to use that card. Go ahead and take a moment to explain movement in Descent. Descent has a pretty unique movement system. Unlike a lot of games where you take a move action, you do your full move action, that's the end of your move action. In Descent, you can actually interrupt your move action. So, for example, if you spent a move action to move 1-2 spaces, you could pause your move action, perform an attack action, and then continue your move action if you had 4 movement to move 2 more spaces back. It's kind of an interesting thing about Descent that's a little bit different from a lot of these kind of board games, so that's a very important point to make. Also, corners do not block line of sight for movement. You could very easily start here, move here for 1 movement, and move here for another movement, and monsters don't block corners either. So again, if you're right here, it'd be 1 movement, a second movement. Even though this is a corner and there's a monster standing right here, he does not block your movement, and that's something to get used to in Descent. That's a lot different from a lot of board games. And finally, when it comes to movement, friendlies can move past each other, but you cannot move through an opponent. So for example, this person cannot move through him. He'd have to go at an angle. And you cannot also attack ranged attacks through anybody. Other miniatures block line of sight when it comes to ranged attacks. So if this hero was right here And this other hero is right here. He cannot use the range attacking against this guy because his own fellow compatriot there blocks his line of sight. Now the ranger does get a pretty cool ability, allows them to ignore that, but it is a special ability. Generally, line of sight for range attacks is blocked by other miniatures on the board. I've explained the basics of Descent to you, enough for you to understand how to play the game. I'm going to clean it up a little bit, set up the game, and I'm going to show you a sample game of Descent. I have the game set up now for the first quest that comes with the game, called First Blood. It has a little dramatic text that comes in the beginning of the game. The Overlord starts with 4 cards, and basically the objective of this quest is for the Overlord to get at least 5 goblins off the map at this side. Once the Overlord's gotten 5 goblins off the map, the Overlord wins. But if the heroes are able to defeat Mauler, the giant Etten, before the Overlord can get at least 5 goblins off the map, then the heroes win. Every round the Overlord is going to get to spawn more goblins on the map as long as there are not 5 goblins already on the map. And he's basically going to keep on trying to get the goblins off the map while the heroes are basically trying to defeat Mauler. And I'm saving you from the dramatic reading, and you should have seen the quest text scrolling across the screen by now to read yourself. We're going to go ahead and start the game with the heroes activation. The Overlord turn always occurs after the heroes. The heroes always start each adventure by going first. The heroes are going to decide that the dwarf is actually going to move first. And since he wants to take out the goblins as quickly as possible, he's actually going to spend some fatigue to do his move. That way he'll end up getting 2 attacks this round. He's going to spend 1 fatigue, move 1 space, spend an additional fatigue to move 1 more space, and then finally he's going to spend a 3rd fatigue. He still can go up to 4 fatigue to move 1 final space. He now gets 2 actions. For his first action, he's going to attack this goblin right here. He's going to be using his 2-handed chip great axe, which allows him to roll a blue and a red die. And if he gets 1 lightning bolt, he's going to do an extra heart. If he gets a 2nd lightning bolt, he's going to get 1 more heart. Additionally, you can also spend lightning bolts to reduce fatigue on your hero, but you only do that once per combat roll. So we're going to pick up the red and the blue die, and we're going to roll it, and we'll get an X. That means that attack is an automatic miss. The dwarf is going to spend his 2nd action to do another attack on the same goblin, and he's going to roll 4 hearts and no lightning bolts. The goblin gets to roll his defense dice, which is 1 gray or 1 white die. He's going to get 2 shields, which are going to block 2 hearts. That goblin only has 2 life though, so 4 minus 2 is 2. It's going to be enough to defeat that goblin. And now the dwarf has spent both of his actions. His turn is actually over. We're going to flip over his action card to let everybody know that this player is already gone, and also shows the Overlord's turn summary on the back of that card. Next we're going to take Tomble's turn, the little guy who is our thief in the party. He's going to also use his fatigue to move because he wants to get 2 actions also. So he's going to spend 1 fatigue to move 1 square. Spend an additional fatigue to move 1 more square. And he wants to get close enough to try to hit Mauler, the lead Etten, who actually has a lot of hit points. He's going to get an extra 8 hit points on top of the fact of being a master Etten, making him have 16 hit points. So he's going to be a pretty tough guy to defeat. You're going to spend 1 more fatigue to get 1 more space further. And this will actually allow Tombo to get his nice class or hero ability, will allows him to get extra defense when he's next to other heroes. So that's actually a really good positioning for him. He's now going to spend his first action to use his 1 ability here, which costs him 1 fatigue, and allows him to search any search spot within 3 spaces. This search spot is 1, 2, 3 spaces away. He's going to search this spot, and he's going to draw the top card of the search deck, and he's going to get a treasure chest. Treasure chest allows him to take 1 item from one of the Act 1 decks. He's going to take the top card of the Act 1 deck, and he's actually going to get a really good card. He's going to get the Scorpion Helm. The Scorpion Helm makes him a little bit better at his ranged attacks. He's going to have that equipped immediately, and it allows his ranged attacks to get +1 range, but he can only have one helmet equipped at a time. He's going to go ahead and put that helmet right on, and he still has one action left, which he's going to use to attack Mauler. He's going to use his range attack, which is his dagger, so he's going to roll a blue and a yellow die. And Mauler gets to roll 2 white dice for his defense. And ended up being a little cocked. So Mauler got 4 shields, but let's figure this out. We got a total range of 5 plus 1, which is 6, plus his helmet, which makes 7. Mauler is definitely within 7 squares worth of range, so he could have hit him with the range. He'll do 2 hearts of damage, but Mauler rolled 4 shields, negating all that damage. There's no lightning bolts to help adjust the damage, and that is the 2 actions for Tomble. His turn is over, so he flips his card over, and now the hero's going to pick the next hero to go. The next hero to go is going to be Ashrian, the group's healer. Now, the heroes want to try to prevent Mauler and this other end from blocking this hallway, because that's going to give the Overlord a really good advantage in this quest. So it may seem a little bit silly, but even though they're the healer, they're going to move to the front line. They're going to spend 1 action to move, and the movement is 5. So they're going to go 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. They're going to end their movement right here on this space. Now they're equipped with a staff. The oak staff has an ability called Reach, which allows them to attack up to 2 spaces away. They're going to use their oak staff to go ahead and attack Mauler, and the oak staff has a blue and a yellow die. We're going to roll the blue and yellow die because Mauler is within 2 spaces range, and Mauler gets to roll his 2 defense dice. We are going to get 3 hearts and a lightning bolt versus 4 shields. Now we can spend that lightning bolt a couple different ways. We can spend it to do an extra 1 heart of damage, which would do 4, or we could have spent that lightning bolt to reduce some fatigue. Ashwin doesn't have any fatigue, so it's pointless to do that, and that'll put us at 4 hearts, but that isn't quite enough to get past Mauler's defenses. Mauler isn't going to take any damage. Ashburn is going to go ahead and, with her second action, use her heroic feat, which is cost an action, and you get to pick 1 group of monsters within 3 spaces, and all those monsters in that group are going to be stunned. Ashburn's going to go ahead and flip her card over, and she's actually going to target this goblin right here, which is in 3 spaces, and it's going to stun all of these goblins right here. Put out some stun tokens to remind us that they are stunned, and that's going to be the end of Ashburn's turn. Finally, it's now Leoric's turn. Leoric gets a movement of 4, and Leoric has a really good special ability that makes him want to be close to the enemies, but not so close that he's going to get stomped on too much. So he's going to use his movement of 4 to move 1, 2, 3, 4 spaces, and that'll be his first action. And then his second action is he's also going to attack Mauler. Now when you're figuring out line of sight, what you do is you pick 1 square corner, or 1 corner of the square you're standing in, and you draw a straight line to any corner of one of the squares your target is in. So for example, if I was trying to target this Etten right here with Leoric, this hero would be blocking line of sight. But if we go from this corner or from this corner and draw a target to this square and pick this corner, we'll see we actually have a clean line of sight that isn't blocked by anybody. So Leoric is going to go ahead and target Mauler. Leoric is going to use a blue and a yellow die, and if he gets 1 lightning bolt, he's going to do a pierce of 2, which is going to ignore up to 2 shields on Mauler. We're going to get 2 shields on Mauler. We're going to get 3 hearts, a range of 4, and a lightning bolt. We're going to count our range 1, 2, 3. We're going to see that Mauler is definitely within the 4 range. So we have 3 hearts and a lightning bolt. We're going to spend that lightning bolt for the pierce 2, which is going to ignore the 2 shields, and we're actually going to do 3 points of damage to Mauler, who's actually going to take the first damage so far in this game. Take a couple of damage tokens, stick it near his base to remind us that he has taken the damage. That is both of Leoric's actions. We're going to flip his card over, And it is now the end of the hero's turn. We're now going to start the overlord phase of the game. And it's the start of the overlord turn. The first thing you're going to do at the start of the overlord turn is you're going to look to make sure there aren't any effects on your overlord creatures or anything like that that happen at the beginning of your turn. In this case there isn't, so you're going to go ahead and draw an overlord card. And we're going to end up with a card called Dark Fortune. We're going to add it to our other cards to help make the lives of the heroes a little more difficult. It says play this card after you roll a die, and you may re-roll the die. Now when you're the overlord player, when you move your bad guys, you have to move them by group. So if I move either one of these figures, then I have to move both those figures before I can move either of these goblins, and vice versa. So if I pick the goblins, I have to move all the goblins before I can move the Ettins. We're going to go ahead and just get the goblins' turn out of the way, because since every one of them is stunned, there's not much they can do except remove their stun tokens. So we'll take away the 4 stun tokens, 1 for each one of the goblins, and that'll pretty much be the end of the goblins' turn. And then we'll now move on to the Ettins part of the turn. We're going to go ahead, and the Ettins, the regular ones, move 5, or correction, they move 3, and the master one also moves 3. Now the way this works is you count the squares and then you land the miniature when you're dealing with larger figure-based miniatures. So we pick him up and we'll go 1, 2, 3 spaces, and we will land him right there. And then for his other action, he's going to make an attack. Now, 2 things to know about the monsters. Now, there are lieutenant monsters and there are regular monsters. Lieutenants are pretty much heroes controlled by the overlord. They get a lot of the hero abilities. Monsters, on the other hand, don't. The monsters cannot spend fatigue for movement because they don't have any attributes. And monsters, unlike heroes, can't use both of their actions for an attack. So if they're already adjacent to a hero, they can't spend 2 actions to attack. They can only do 1 attack and another action. So for this Ettin, we're going to go ahead and attack, and he's going to go ahead and target Leoric. Now Leoric has a special ability that says each monster within 3 squares of you receives -1 heart on all attack rolls. So if this Ettin is attacking him, he's going to automatically get -1 heart to his roll. A regular Ettin gets to roll a blue and a red die, and Leoric is going to get 1 white defense die. Leoric's going to get 1 shield, and the Ettin is going to get 3 hearts and no lightning bolts. He's automatically going to get -1 heart because Leoric's always on ability, and he's also going to get another -1 heart because Leoric got 1 shield. So Leoric is going to end up taking 1 point of damage. He can take a total of 8, so he's actually doing okay right now. I could have used this person's special ability right here, their Stone Skin special ability, but I'm going to save that for when Mauler starts attacking. I think that's probably going to be a better time to use the ability. This Ettin's turn is done, and now Mauler gets to move. He's going to go ahead and move up the 1 space right here, and he's going to go ahead and attack Ashran. Mauler's going to get to roll a blue die and a red die to attack, and he has a special ability that if he gets a lightning bolt, he's going to do an extra 3 points of damage. And plus, our heroes don't know this, but our overlord does have some cards that are going to increase that damage even more. Ashran is going to use her special ability. She's going to take 1 fatigue, and then she's going to exhaust the card. That's going to give her an extra 1 defense die that she's going to roll. Now, since Ashran is next to Leoric, Mauler's automatically going to do -1 heart damage, so we're going to take away 1 heart. And Ashran's also going to get to roll 2 defense dice. You're going to go ahead and roll the dice. And we're going to get 3 shields, and Mauler's going to get 3 hearts and a lightning bolt. We're going to use that lightning bolt to add an additional 3 hearts worth of damage. And in addition to that, the overlord is going to spend Dark Might, which is going to give an additional lightning bolt, and Critical Blow, which is going to give an additional 3 hearts worth of damage. So we're looking at Ashran taking 3 damage, plus 3 damage for the lightning bolt, plus this combo is going to be another 3 damage for a total of 9 points of damage. The armor roll is going to take away 3 for a total of 6. Plus the fact that she is still next to Leoric is going to bring it down 1 more point, so Ashwin's going to take a total of 5 points of damage. A pretty good hit, but not enough to take her out. She still has 5 hit points left, so she's actually doing okay. The Overlord is going to discard their 2 cards. And the Overlord has moved all their figures, so they're going to be done with their action phase, that part of their action phase. They're going to get the reinforcement phase. And this quest says that the Overlord, during their reinforcement phase, can bring a goblin back onto the map. In this case, it's going to be in this space, or this section of the board. I'm going to place the goblin right back here. And it's now the end of the Overlord phase. We're going to start the hero phase. Heroes are going to flip their cards over to signify it's the start of their turn. And we'll go ahead and start the second round of the game. For the hero's turn, Ashwin is going to go ahead and start. Ashwin's going to refresh her card, which is her Stone Skin ability. And she's going to get 2 actions. She has a reach of 2. She's going to go ahead and attack one of these goblins. And this one is going to be the target. It is within 2 spaces, and she does have line of sight to it. She's going to get a blue and a yellow die versus the goblins, 1 defense die. She's going to get no defense on the goblin, and she's going to get 4 hearts plus a lightning bolt. Her lightning bolt's going to give her an extra point of damage, so she's going to do 5 points of damage to the goblin. Goblin's not going to get any defense dice. Goblin only has 2 life, so the goblin is going to be defeated and is removed from the board. Ashwin does have a second attack, or a second action I should say, which she's going to actually use for attack. She's going to use that second action to turn around and go ahead and attack this Etten right there, which is blocking their path. What I didn't explain earlier is the goblins have an ability called Scamper. Scamper allows them to actually move through enemy figures, so these goblins can technically run through our heroes, run through this Etten, and get to the end of the board, which will help the Overlord get to the victory condition. So they really need to get this Etten out of the way so he stops blocking the heroes from stopping these goblins from advancing. So Ashwin's going to take her second attack. A blue and a yellow die versus 2 defense for that. We're going to get 2 hearts and a lightning bolt versus 2 shields. The 2 shields will cancel out the 2 hearts, but we do have the lightning bolt, which is going to give us 1 point of damage, which is going to be enough to injure that Etten. We'll put a point of damage to remind us there. That Etten still has 4 hit points left. Next, well, must remember to flip the card over. Next, we're going to go ahead and activate Grisbin the Thirsty. Grisbin the Thirsty is going to use a move action to move to this space right here. He is then going to use his heroic feat, which is going to give him an extra attack. We're going to flip his card over to let us know that his heroic feat has been used. And then he's going to attack with a red and a blue die. We're going to get 4 hearts, but the Etten's going to get 5 shields, meaning the Etten isn't hurt at all. Not a really good roll for him at this point. With his remaining action, he could decide to attack again, but instead he's going to use a rest action, which will end his turn. Normally we put a token here to remind us that we used a rest action, but since it's our last action, we don't need to. Simply flip over. Rest action is going to remove all fatigue from our dwarf hero, and that's going to be the dwarves' end of the dwarves' turn. The next hero to go is going to be Leoric. Leoric is actually going to go ahead and do couple things really quick. He's going to try to take out all these goblins by using a special ability, but he also wants to make sure he has a backup plan in case he doesn't get a good roll. He's going to go ahead and spend 2 fatigue for his movement. He's going to spend 1 fatigue to move 1 space, and then he's going to spend 1 more fatigue to move the second space. He is then going to use a special ability which requires 1 action. You'll see the arrow symbol there. We're going to flip his card over to signify that this action is done, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what that ability does. What this special ability does is he basically makes a point blank fireball with himself as the center of the fireball. It's going to attack everything around him, and that's why we moved the dwarf out of the way so the dwarf didn't get hit. We're going to flip the card over, He's still going to have his 2 fatigue and his 1 damage he took on the prior turn. He's going to roll his attack dice, and it's going to affect all the goblins around him. He's going to roll a blue and a yellow, and each goblin is going to roll their defense individually, but we're going to get 1 attack roll, so we want to roll really high here. Pretty decent. We got 3 hearts. Each goblin is going to get their defense die. We'll start with this goblin who will roll. We'll get 0 defense, that's 3 damage. This goblin is going to be defeated. Going to pick this one next. He rolled 1. He has 2 hit points. He's going to take 2 points of damage. That is going to be enough to defeat that goblin. Roll for this goblin. Again, we'll get 1 shield. -3 is 2. That is enough to defeat that goblin. And finally, we're going to go for the master goblin who has 4 lives, or 4 hit points. We're going to get 1 shield. He's going to take 2 points of damage. Not enough to defeat him, but it definitely brings him down to half his life. Now Leoric still has 1 action left because he spent fatigue to move. He's actually going to spend 1 point of fatigue to make sure he's back close enough to his fellow heroes to make sure they still get his nice bonus where they take 1 less point of damage. And then he is going to, with his final action, he's going to make a ranged attack against the surviving goblin. He's going to get 3 hearts, 6 range. 6 range is more enough to reach the master goblin. The master goblin is going to get no shield, so he's going to take 3 points of damage. He can only take 2 more. The goblin is going to be defeated, and all the goblins have been removed from the board. That is the last action that Leoric can take, and his turn is over. It's going to leave Tomble left to take his turn. Tomble is going to go ahead and try to see if he can get rid of this Etten, and that's going to help the party possibly win this quest. The next hero to go is going to be Leoric. Leoric is actually going to go ahead and do couple things really quick. He's going to try to take out all these goblins by using a special ability, but he also wants to make sure he has a backup plan in case he doesn't get a good roll. He's going to go ahead and spend 2 fatigue for his movement. He's going to spend 1 fatigue to move 1 space, and then he's going to spend 1 more fatigue to move the 2nd space. He is then going to use a special ability which requires 1 action. You'll see the arrow symbol there. We're going to flip his card over to signify that this action is done, but I'm going to go ahead and show you what that ability does. What this special ability does is he basically makes a point-blank fireball with himself as the center of the fireball. It's going to attack everything around him, and that's why we moved the dwarf out of the way so the dwarf didn't get hit. We're going to flip the card over. He's still going to have his 2 fatigue and his 1 damage he took on the prior turn. He's going to roll his attack dice, and it's going to affect all the goblins around him. He's going to roll a blue and a yellow, and each goblin is going to roll their defense individually, but we're going to get 1 attack roll, so we want to roll really high here. Pretty decent. We got 3 hearts. Each goblin is going to get their defense die. We'll start with this goblin who will roll. We'll get 0 defense, that's 3 damage. This goblin is going to be defeated. Going to pick this one next. He rolled 1. He has 2 hit points. He's going to take 2 points of damage. That is going to be enough to defeat that goblin. Roll for this goblin. Again, we'll get 1 shield. -3 is 2. That is enough to defeat that goblin. And finally, we're going to go for the master goblin who has 4 lives, or 4 hit points. We're going to get 1 shield. He's going to take 2 points of damage. Not enough to defeat him, but it definitely brings him down to half his life. Now Leoric still has 1 action left because he spent fatigue to move. He's actually going to spend 1 point of fatigue to make sure he's back close enough to his fellow heroes to make sure they still get his nice bonus where they take 1 less point of damage. And then he is going to, with his final action, he's going to make a ranged attack against the surviving goblin. He's going to get 3 hearts, 6 range. 6 range is more enough to reach the master goblin. The master goblin is going to get no shield, so he's going to take 3 points of damage. He can only take 2 more. The goblin is going to be defeated, and all the goblins have been removed from the board. That is the last action that Leoric can take, and his turn is over. It's going to leave Tomble left to take his turn. Tomble is going to go ahead and try to see if he can get rid of this Etten, and that's going to help the party possibly win this quest. Tomble is going ahead and take his first action, which is going to be a melee attack against the Etten right there. He's going to roll a blue and a yellow dice versus the 2 defense of the Etten. All he needs to do is 4 points of damage, and that Etten will be defeated. He's going to get 2 hearts and a lightning bolt, and the Etten is going to get 1 shield. The blades have a special ability that says that whenever they're used as a melee weapon, they're going to get an extra 1 heart of damage, so that is going to take 3 total hearts of damage, minus the 1 shield for a total of 2 points of damage. The Etten only has 2 hit points left, and Tomblin has 2 options right now. He can make 1 more attack and hope he does enough damage to take out the Etten, or he can do a rest action and try to get rid of this fatigue. He really doesn't need his fatigue right now because he doesn't have a lot of abilities that require fatigue except for a search action, which he isn't really wanting to use right now because we really need to get rid of this Etten, or at least the heroes do. So he's going to go ahead and take a risk, and he's going to go ahead and attack the Etten 1 more time. And we're going to get an X, so it doesn't matter what's rolled on the gray or the white dice. It's going to be an automatic miss. Tomblin's turn is now over. All the heroes have taken the turn. It's now going to be the start of the overlord turn again. For the start of the overlord turn, we're going to check for beginning of the round actions. There are none. We're going to go ahead and draw a card. And we're going to get Frenzy. Now Frenzy is one of those nice little cards that's going to allow the overlord to actually use 2 attack actions instead of 1, which is normal for the overlord. Overlord's going to go ahead and declare Mauler as his first attacker. Mauler is going to go ahead and attack Ashrian. And not only that, we're going to go ahead and spend our Frenzy card right now to go ahead and make 2 attacks with Mauler this time. We're going to go ahead and pick up the dice, which is going to be a red and a blue for Mauler. And Ashrian is only going to get 1 defense die. Ashrian is going to go ahead and take the fatigue, sensing there's a little bit of pain coming her way. Exhaust this card, get 2 defense dice. Well, very good roll for defense. Mauler is going to get 3 hearts, 5 defense, not quite enough to get through. And we're going to go ahead and spend 1 more card. We're going to use Dark Might, which is going to give us a lightning bolt. That's going to give us an additional 3 points of damage, plus our 3 is going to be 6. Even though we have this nice 5 defense, Ashrian is still going to take 1 point of damage. Mauler's going to go ahead and make his second attack, and now Ashrian can't use his or her special ability of Stone Skin this turn because it's already been exhausted. Mauler's going to roll 3 hearts versus 2 shields. Actually a pretty good defense. The Overlord's going to go ahead and spend Dark Fortune because he's not liking the fact that his dice aren't really rolling too well. That's going to allow him to re-roll 1 of the dice. I'm going to go ahead and re-roll the blue die and hopefully get more than just a heart. Maybe we'll get a lightning bolt. Ah, there we go. We now have 4 hearts and a lightning bolt. We'll spend that lightning bolt for the extra 3 damage for a total of 7 damage. Minus 2 is 5 more points of damage. That's 11 total points of damage for Ashrian. Ashrian is going to be knocked unconscious. Ashrian is removed from the board. A counter is placed in her place to let you know where she was at. And then Ashrian takes a total fatigue to totally max out her fatigue. She can have a total of 4, so that's going to put her a total of 4 fatigue. It's now the other Etten player's turn, or the other Etten's turn. And that Etten is going to go ahead and target the dwarf. And I just realized I made a quick mistake, and I apologize. That's what happens when you're trying to explain a game. Ashrian is actually not going to be knocked out because Ashrian would have taken 1 point less of damage from both of those attacks, which would have been 1 less point of damage from the first attack, which would have been 0. And the second one would have done 1 less point of damage also, which means she would have took 9 because Leoric of the book is within 3 spaces of Ashrian. I can't believe I forgot that. It's the difficulty of explaining a game. You kind of go fast, unfortunately. Sometimes I miss that one little thing, and I apologize. So we'll go ahead and stand Ashrian back up. She'll actually have 9 points of damage. Still one more point of damage to go, so she's not quite out of it. And now this Ettin's going to go ahead and go, and since we almost have Ashrian out, we're going to go ahead and try to see if we can finish her. We're going to take a red and a blue versus the 1 defense, and we'll remember the -1 heart this time. We get 1 shield, 4 hearts, plus a lightning bolt, which is going to be an extra 2 damage, so that's going to be more than enough to take her out. So now we will remove her from the board. And we'll put the token there to remind us that she has been removed from the board. And we'll go ahead and max out her hit points and damage. And we'll go ahead and max out her fatigue. Now, I still have 1 action left I can perform with this Ettin, but I can't perform another attack because you can't make 2 attacks with the regular monsters. I could make a move action, but I actually like the position of the Ettin now. We'll go ahead and declare that the end of the monster part of the Overlord phase, and we'll go ahead and take our reinforcements. We'll bring a Master Goblin back on the board. Go ahead and spawn that Master Goblin, and that's going to be the end of the Overlord turn. I'm going to take a moment, don't want to do any more turns because I think you get the idea of how the game is played, but I am going to show you what would happen when a player is healed by another party member. So we're going to go ahead and take one part of the hero phase. We're going to pick one of the heroes to go first. It doesn't really matter. We'll simply pick Leoric at this point. Leoric is going to go ahead and take his action. For his first action, he's going to use a revive hero action over there on Ashrian. Now that means Ashrian is going to roll 2 red dice, and for every heart I roll, Ashrian is going to heal 1 hit point, and for every lightning bolt, Ashrian is going to heal 1 fatigue. I roll the dice, get 3 hearts. Ashrian is brought back on the board, down 7 hit points and still down 4 fatigue. Leoric still gets 1 more action, and the rest of the heroes still get their turn, and Ashrian will still get her full turn thanks to the fact that Leoric spent 1 of his actions as a revive action. As a father of 2 younger children, it's very important for me to look at a board game and decide if it's something that I think my younger kids can play. I enjoy playing board games, and the ability to play games with my 2 children it's something I really enjoy. So whenever I do a review of a game, I like to take a few moments and discuss the suggested age for the game. Now, Descent lists it as a game for ages 14 and up. And overall, I don't think that's too bad of a suggestion, simply because the game is a little bit complex. Now, if it was just a group of kids playing the game, 13, 14 is probably a good age. If you had a parent willing to sit down and play the game, though, you can probably lower that age range down probably to about 9 or 10. The gameplay isn't that difficult. It just requires simple math, the addition of the hearts, the ability to look at lightning bolts and do subtraction of the shields from the hearts to figure out total damage. The statistics aren't very high. You're looking at move is 4. I mean, anybody, a 9-year-old can easily count space of 4 or 5. The game does require a fair amount of reading, so it's going to have pretty good reading comprehension skills. You're going to be able to have to read all the abilities, understand what the abilities mean, and be able to use those abilities properly for your hero. And it's also going to require you to use a lot of planning, especially if you play the game as a campaign. Now, this game does allow you to level up your heroes and get special abilities and extra hero abilities and skills as you level up your heroes. And all these different cards are going to have different abilities on them of different various powers. They're also going to cost different various amounts. The not as powerful ones cost 1 experience point, but some of the best ones cost 3 experience points. So younger kids are going to be required to plan out how they want to level up their hero. And if you're not very efficient with your leveling of your hero, you could become a little bit weaker in the later stages of the campaign, especially if you have a really aggressive overlord who's doing some really good spending of their experience points. Now, the graphical images in the game aren't too bad. There's a few images that may be a little bit something you don't want younger eyes to see. This is probably one of the worst ones right here with the Barghast. It's an undead skeletal dog type of creature. The elemental doesn't look too bad. It's just basically something, a big flaming creature. The other one is the zombie, which again isn't quite that bad. The graphics on the boards aren't quite that bad either. When you're going to see some reverse sides, you're going to see skeletons, bones, corpses, and everything like that on the board. Again, it's not overly gory, but it does have a strong fantasy feel. Overall, this game, I would say, is very playable by a 10 or 11-year-old. I think 14 is a little bit on the higher end, especially if you have an adult sitting down to play. Now, it was just a group of teenagers trying to figure out how to play the game. I think 13 and 14 is a good starting age range. But if you're a parent looking for a dungeon crawl game to play with the younger kids, if you don't have a problem with sitting down, giving a little bit of help, directing them on developing their characters and helping them with some of the concepts and teaching them the game, this game can easily be played by a 10-year-old child with a parent very easily. Descent as a dungeon crawler has a lot of positives going for it. First of all, it's got a lot of history from the first edition, and you can see a lot of the stuff from first edition used in second edition, and you can see a little bit of its heritage there. I like how the game has a lot of heroes in the base set. The game comes with 8 different heroes that all have different statistics and play a little bit differently, all with their own special abilities. You can easily make differing parties every time you play the game, and the game would actually feel slightly differently every time you play it, just because all the heroes have different abilities. I also like how you can customize your heroes, whether you want to be a rune master, which is more of a traditional magic user, or if you want to be a necromancer, which is a magic user who summons undead and uses their undead on the enemies. I like that. I think it's a great inclusion. It makes this game feel more like an RPG, which is what the dungeon crawler is trying to be. We're all basically looking for an RPG and a box. Not all of us have time to play 4, 5, 6 hour RPG games anymore, and that's why we like the RPG in a box or the dungeon crawler, because we can get our friends together for 2 hours and play a game that has a really strong RPG feel. That's something that Descent has. Descent comes with 20 quests. They can each be played individually, which I think is truly a disservice to the game, because the game does play best when you play it as a quest. There's a lot of replay value in the game because there are 20 quests, and it does tell an epic story over those quest lines, but you're actually only going to use 9 of those quests every time you play the game, and you can pick different quests every time you go through, and the success and failure on those quests is going to have long-standing repercussions on the heroes and on the overlord. I think that is a fantastic thing, and again, it helps the game feel a little bit more like an RPG, and it's something else I appreciate about the game. I also like how all the quests have a different feel to them. It's not just a kill 10 skeletons and the heroes win, kill the heroes, then the heroes lose type of game. I really like that aspect of the game. There's a lot of variety to these quests. I mean, there's quests that have different victory conditions, whether it's trying to rescue somebody who's trapped in a dungeon, whether you're trying to stop somebody from being tortured by a goblin before the goblin can escape from the torture chamber with his victim. I like the different victory conditions in these quests. I also like how the campaign play also offers a map which adds just a little more fun and makes it feel a little more like an RPG. I didn't get too much into this, but every time when you're playing the quest version or the campaign version of the game, when the players move around the map, they're actually going to have encounters at each one of these little sections. Now, they're not major encounters. It's just going to be a card draw, and you're going to read the card draw based on what location you're in. That's going to give you a kind of a little quick little encounter. For example, if you're traveling from here and you went past this road section, you'd see that nothing would happen if you drew this card, but if you passed by this section right here, you'd have this quick encounter right here. And again, there's nothing major, but it does add to the game and make it feel a little bit more, just a little more like an RPG, and I really do appreciate that. I also like how you can build your heroes up over time. You can get better equipment for your heroes. You can get better abilities for your heroes. You can learn new abilities for your heroes. Your heroes feel like they're growing as the campaign goes across. Another great aspect of the game. Now, there are a couple negatives to the game, and some of them are very minor and some of them not so minor. The first one is that the overlord gets lieutenants. There are no miniatures included in this game for the lieutenants. There are 6 lieutenants in the game, and it would have been really nice to have miniatures for those lieutenants. Unfortunately, we don't have miniatures for the lieutenants, and they're simply represented by tokens on the board. It's not that bad, but I would have spent an extra $10, probably $10 what it would have cost. Would have made this game go from $79.95 to $89.95 to get 6 more miniatures just to add a little bit to the theme. Because when you get to these adventures with the lieutenants, you see these great sculpts on the board, and then you see this, and you're kind of like, really? You can easily bring in your own miniatures from other games if you have any of the dungeon crawlers or any miniatures at all. Easy to replace, but it's one thing I was kind of disappointed about with this game. The other aspect that I do and don't like at the same time is the game does not have player elimination, which in and of itself is a good thing, but I don't like how you can abuse the knockout rules. It's very easy for a hero to get knocked out, and it doesn't really feel that threatening in this game because it's very easy for another hero just to simply come across, spend one action, and the hero's back up and ready to go into the fight. Now, you can have mixed opinions on this. I like the fact that there is no player elimination. This is a good thing. It's one of the negatives I have with Super Dungeon Explorer. Another really good dungeon type game, but once the overlord in that game starts defeating the heroes, it becomes a snowball effect, and nobody enjoys sitting off to the side and watching everybody else play a board game. It's not why we play the games. We enjoy it as a social gathering. Their solution was to include the knockout rules, and while it is a slight hindrance to the game, to the heroes to have their players knocked out, it really isn't all that terrible, and it almost makes it feel like in some instances you'll sacrifice a hero just because you know they're going to be able to stand up on the next turn. Now, my solution to this was to use like some life tokens. You can use poker chips if you want, you can use Pente stones, wherever you want to use. And basically the way we've been trying this, and we haven't played more than like 5 or 6 games this way, so we're still trying to make sure it's balanced, but it's a suggestion you can try. Every time a hero is knocked unconscious, the heroes also lose one of these tokens. Now, if they manage to lose all their tokens, the heroes actually lose the game. And we're still trying to figure out how many is a good amount and try and make it. It's just kind of a homebrew type of rule we're trying out right now. And so far, all of us are liking it. Don't know if it's going to work out perfectly because some of the quests in this game can be rather challenging, and adding another lost condition to the heroes could be a detriment. We just started a new campaign while we're trying this, and we're only a few quests in. So we'll figure out how this works out. But that is one suggestion we're trying right now to see how that works on getting over the issue where the heroes just kind of have a rubber band, knock down, stand up type of aspect to the game. I also like how this game, talking about some more of the positives, how this game adds a lot of variety to the overlord. There's a lot of these dungeon crawl games where it's not always fun to be the overlord because you don't get all the fun and the selections that the heroes do. In this game, the overlord actually gets quite a few choices. A lot of the quests have what are called open groups where the overlord can choose what kind of monsters are going to be populated in that quest. Now, not all quests give you 100% freedom of what monsters to choose, but there is a little bit of selection that you can choose, and I like that. And if you own the original Descent and the conversion kit, you can use all the monsters and all the heroes from the original Descent game in these quests. Add tons and tons of variety to this game with lots of heroes and lots of monsters, which is going to really, really exponentially increase the replayability of this game. Another really fantastic and really positive aspect about this game. Overall, I think Descent as a dungeon crawler is a really good game. The quest play quickly. You can get one adventure complete, quest adventure done in a night very easily. Each adventure is broken down usually into 2 encounters on average. One encounter is one map. This is the very first quest in the game I was showing you. I don't want to ruin too much about the game because a lot of the enjoyment is experiencing the quests themselves, but a lot of the quests are broken down in 2 encounters. For example, if this was a 2 encounter quest, after the heroes won this one, they'd go down into the crypts and start the second part of the encounter, which would be a whole new map that you build. The maps are kept very small, keeps everything very tight, keeps the interaction very quick. There's not a lot of long distance movement or anything like that. Allows the heroes to get into the action, experience the fun of the game, and complete an encounter pretty much in an hour and 15 minutes, which means a 2 encounter quest can be done in about 2.5 hours, which is a really good positive. Additionally, the Overlord player can customize their hand of Overlord cards that they're going to be playing against the players by spending their own experience they're going to be getting throughout the quest to buy additional cards added to their hand of Overlord cards. And you'll see all these range from anywhere from 1 all the way up to 3 experience points for some of the truly powerful Overlord cards, which can really cause a damper on the heroes. I think Descent's 2nd edition is a very good dungeon crawler. It's got a lot of quests, a lot of replayability. There's already expansions on the market with additional quest lines out there. This game has a lot of life in it, a lot of room for future expansions. It's a really, really good dungeon crawler. This has been another off-the-shelf board game review. Thanks for watching.